Good evening. Can you hear me okay in the back? Yeah? Okay. This is Trevor. My name is Dawn Lundy Martin. I am professor of English here at the University of Pittsburgh and also director of the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics. We call it CAP, that's the acronym. We're thrilled for this event tonight. So I want to thank you all for coming. And my time up here will actually be brief because tonight's event is curated by the poet Rickey Laurentiis, who is our inaugural CAP post-MFA, postdoctoral fellow. Rickey has been, or will be in fellowship here for 2 years, and is in the third semester of those 2 years. So it's a perfect time, actually, I think, for Rickey to present some of the things he's been thinking about, and the way that he'll do that tonight is through this curation, which I trust you'll find thrilling and unexpected, and working at those intersections that we at the center so deeply value, and those intersections are between poetry and other genres, and what's surprising that happens when you bring poetry together with film, or poetry together with performance art, or poetry together with dance. And so I'm excited about what's going to happen, and I hope that you will be too. I'm going to say a lot more about Rickey Laurentiis' time here in January, when Rickey will read some of the work that they have been writing here during these 2 years. And Rickey will read actually with Terrence Hayes, and we'll be thrilled to welcome the poet Terrence Hayes back. So that'll happen, I think it's the third week in January. You'll be aware of it. Our publicity materials will be distributed wherever. But before I introduce Rickey in the formal way, I'll say that this programming could not be possible without the Dietrich School, the Dietrich Foundation, and we're collaborating tonight with the Warhol Museum, so we're deeply grateful to them for all of the work that they've put into the programming happening this week. So here's the formal bio. Rickey Laurentiis was raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, raised to love the dark. His poetry has been supported by several foundations and fellowships, including the Whiting Foundation, Lannan Literary Foundation, Civitella Ranieri Foundation in Italy, Poetry International Rotterdam, National Endowment for the Arts, Cave Canem, and the Poetry Foundation, which awarded him a Ruth Lilly Fellowship in 2012. In 2016, he traveled to Palestine as an invited reader for the Palestine Festival of Literature. He received his MFA in writing from Washington University in St. Louis, where he was a Chancellor's Graduate Fellow, and his bachelor's in liberal arts from Sarah Lawrence College. That's where he received his bachelor's in liberal arts from Sarah Lawrence College, where he read literature and queer theory, a good combination. He is the author of Boy with Thorn, winner of the Cave Canem Poetry Prize and the Levis Reading Prize, and a finalist for the Kate Tufts Discovery Award and the Tom Gunn Award for Gay Poetry, and a Lambda Literary Award. Boy with Thorn was also named one of the top 10 debuts of 2015 by Poets and Writers magazine, and a top 16 best poetry books by BuzzFeed, among many other distinctions. Individual poems have appeared widely, so I'll just name some of them. The Boston Review, Feminist Studies, the Kenyon Review, the Los Angeles Review of Books Quarterly, New Republic, the New York Times, and Poetry Magazine. He's been anthologized widely. Prospect 3 Arts Catalog, Notes for Now, was one of those places where he's been anthologized, as well as translated into Arabic, Spanish, and Ukrainian. Laurentiis' interests include visual culture, ekphrasis, chiaroscuro and shade, revisionary logics, penetration and the body, radical justice, cultural studies, and shame. He has taught at Columbia University, Sarah Lawrence College, and the 92nd Street Y in New York City. Again, he is the inaugural fellow in creative writing at the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics here at the University of Pittsburgh, and serves on the executive board for Black Art Futures Fund. Please welcome an extraordinary imagination, an extraordinary poet. Please welcome Rickey Laurentiis.
380 years ago, perhaps on a chilly day such as ours, alone no doubt, outside as much as possible a messy, prescriptive gaze, a woman sets out to make a painting. Artemisia Gentileschi's self-portrait as the allegory of painting would on its surface, for many, inspire no deep interest, might to everyday eyes seem static, mundane. A woman, she is a painter, rests on her left arm, gripping a palette of paints in her hand. The typical Baroque dress of the day swarms and accentuates the rest of the arm, indeed most of what we see of her body, in mossy greens, browns, bronzes, excepting the bosom where a flash of white contrasts almost provocatively against a dangling golden necklace. The left arm extends the other way, upward, toward the edge of the canvas where she holds carefully a pencil brush, as if to paint the finest details of a painting still out of frame. Her overall pose suggests the looks of one overtaken or overwhelmed. There's Devin. Nevertheless, her face, beneath a busyness of black hair, is an expression of study, her visible mouth pressed into a thin line of work. The technique might be evident, but despite it, the painting probably still lacks no real critical interest and only bursts into something approaching the ecstatic upon discovering the argument in its title. Painting should be, quote, a beautiful woman, the writer Cesare Ripa wrote about 50 years before Gentileschi made that painting, writing in his emblem book of representations. Ripa continues, quote, painting should be a beautiful woman with full black hair, disheveled and twisted in various ways, with arched eyebrows that show imaginative thought. A chain of gold should hang from her throat, at the end of which should be a mask with the word imitation on front. And most problematically, her mouth should be gagged, covered with a cloth tied behind her ears, because of course, paintings don't speak. Now one might begin to see the ecstatic potential in Gentileschi's painting. As if with that pencil brush, she follows every detail to its conclusion but one. The gag is removed, the cloth erased. She makes what is a very, very early feminist argument in her decision to revise Ripa's allegory and relocate agency in the femme. For all of this, we, or at least I, am much indebted, but I would probably be pushing a lie if I didn't reveal my true obsession with this history. Isn't it interesting how, in order to explain or describe a painting, a sort of visual or textual terrain, Cesare Ripa pushes into language, into a lyric allegory, or in other words, into a kind of poetics of metaphor? And isn't it interesting how Gentileschi, accepting again one powerful revision, accepts his testimony, leans upon his language in order to support her own visual argument? I mention it to give example to the centuries, even millennia-long intertwining that language and image, or specifically painting and the poetic, have endured. Could we say we are sisters in our making, each tugging at the limits of the other, for each does have a beautiful limit, and in the process, mothering art, event, society. Tonight's event, the Black Ecstatic, is the evidence of such sister-making and collaboration. A little over a year ago, I quite literally fell into Jessica Belt, the Milton Fine curator at the Andy Warhol Museum. That's a true story. To begin what's been an engaging, if not sometimes challenging, conversation about visual art and culture, poetry and the literary landscape, curation and theories of such, blackness, whiteness, the conundrum of Pittsburgh itself, funding, tender, the unignorable assault, violence, and erasure settling over our nation like a fine white sheet. And despite all of this, or maybe because of it, we also laughed, ate and shared drinks together, took time to listen to each other, challenged each other, lived and practiced joy. I do think of joy these days as a kind of studio practice, a labor that must be attempted each day to achieve itself. And tonight, at least, I expect it's only through this practice we can make a way for the ecstatic, let alone the Black ecstatic, a kind of brief intensity of clarity, pleasure that shirks shame and is finally only self-awareness, self-enjoyment, a celebration as much as it is a renunciation of any of those discourses or any allegory that means to dictate the body, police, or even gag it. The gag is the Black ecstatic is the gag come off, come out of the frame, done away with the story. In Devon Shimayama's work, I could argue you see this in one sense quite literally. The paintings exceed their very frames. Furs and feathers bleed past their edge. Diamonds and rhinestones reach out and return the gaze. The collaged-on figures or arched eyebrows of Rihanna greet you. Glitter accosts and it beckons you. All this film and drag material that in one hand might lock itself down into stereotype, but in the other breaks stasis, revives, and ignites once again into agency. This is the work that queerness always does, the work that Blackness does, turning what would dare impede you into the very launch point for discovery and for pleasure. Tonight's program sees this work move into a kind of Black and embodied frequency. I wanted to see how Black poets use the line, distinct from how the drawer draws one, toward a new way of being. I wanted to see how a Black filmmaker argues her body into a visual canon. I wanted to hear how language exposes its own beautiful limit vis-a-vis the painterly. And rather than ignore the gaps that will surely emerge, luxuriate in them and see them as mother. Though the mother might be a little cruel sometimes, the good kind of mean and meaning. You might hear that tonight as I first did reading the work of Sofia Sinclair, quote, "The Negro scrawls the language of the birds, dreams of bold rivers and molten crowns," she warns, in a lyric that, like that glitter, seduces as much as it means to chide. Molten crowns, she says, because the work of empire ain't the work we have ahead. Rather, it's the work of destroying it. And Roger Reeves isn't here necessarily to comfort you either. Quote, "My, how the rooster of the roof legislates our depression," Reeves admits, as if a way of saying each day moves in the cycle of our sadnesses, our objection, and our flesh, and what we have to do is to face the law of it. Face that law, that most august and supreme course, at least, of course, until we finally decide to overturn it. Gertrude who, Airea D. Matthews might ask us tonight. She means Gertrude Stein, that old totem of modernism she both does and does not have time for. That's why she puts her under pressure in a lyric that also exceeds forms, bursting into opera. Opera here, Twitter there, text messages here, all the while maintaining a central urgency and energy. And that's where we'll end tonight, with big bitch energy, as we move through the visions and revisions of filmmaker Fatima Jamal's current project, No Fats, No Film. It is a film I predict will be like a holler in the wind, a necessary correction that, especially tonight, on the eve of our powers meaning to erase many of us from an honorable existence, is an insistence we need to listen to and learn from. What all these artists share, Shimayama among them, is an attention to the body, no, to the Black flesh, the lived pulses of it, the humors of it, its excess, its beauty, its promise. They employ the deranging work of the Black ecstatic and remind us how within a Black body that is historically and presently presumed without credible power, there is yet power. How when all the senses seem taken up in an effort pitched so much toward literal survival, they don't seem free, there is yet freedom. How we can, in fact, enjoy this world, can still call it a good thing without a need to fully comprehend why, because the West's comprehensible grammar was never intended for us. Yet here we are. I have but one request of you tonight, the audience, as we move together through this exploration of the visual, the poetic, and the ecstatic, and that is to be ecstatic. Allow yourselves to go there. If you hear words that make you clap, clap. If you feel a line that says to you, hum, go ahead and hum. If you gotta cry, girl, go cry all day long and night. If you wanna laugh, laugh. Do like Janaleski and rip off any gags from your mouth. Be present with us tonight, for we are here to reclaim pleasure in ourselves, to remember we are flesh. Okay, the poets, the poets, tell me. The poets, all of who have their more professional bios you should have in your program, So I didn't read that, right? We'll read in the order just announced. Sofia Sinclair will begin, then Roger Reeves, Airea D. Matthews, followed by a short adjustment as we get prepared for the film by Fatima Jamal. After that film, we'll all of us rejoin the stage for a short discussion and possibly a Q&A. And we hope you also will join us again tomorrow in this ecstatic week as Cleaver Cruz with Devin Shimayama engage in Shop Talk, a discussion on Black joy, masculinity, and barbershops, and that'll be at the Warhol tomorrow night. A performance by Brendan Hawkins will follow that, and then finally we will dance, because we just gotta dance, y'all. We gotta dance at these times. Now, please, won't you help me robustly welcome all our guests, including the first one, Sofia Sinclair.
Hi, good night, Pittsburgh. Good night. In Jamaica, when we say good night, you say good night back. I'm so happy to be here, Rickey. Like, I'm not religious, but you took me to church. Thank you. Can you all hear me? More importantly, can you see me? I don't know, this lighting is, looking a little. When Rickey and I were talking about our outfits for tonight, he said, be ecstatic. I said, say no more. I'm happy to be here reading with heroes and friends, with Roger and Airea, and with Fatima, who I just met, but she already in my coven. So thank you, Rickey and Cap, for having us. I'm going to be reading a few poems from my debut collection, Cannibal. And the book is called Cannibal because of the linguistic history of the word. The word cannibal is the English variant of the Spanish word canibal, which comes from the word caribal, a reference to the native Carib people whom Columbus thought ate human flesh, and from whom the word Caribbean originates. So by virtue of being Caribbean, all West Indian people like me are already, in a purely linguistic sense, born savage. This is home. Have I forgotten it? Wild conch shell dialect, black apostrophe curled tight on my tongue, or how the Spanish built walls of broken glass to keep me out, but the doctor bird kept chasing and raking me in. This place is your place, wreathed in red sargassum, ancient driftwood nursed on the pensive sea, the ramshackle altar I visited often, packed full with fish skull, bright with lignum vitae plumes. Father, I have asked so many miracles of it, to be patient and forgiving, to be remade for you in some small wonder. And what a joy to still believe in anything. My diction now as straight as my hair, that stranger we've long stopped searching for. But if somehow our half-sunken hearts could answer, I would cup my mouth in warm bowls over the earth and kiss the wet dirt of home. Taste bogue mud and one long orange peel for skin. I'd open my ear for sugar cane and long stalks of gungo peas to climb in. I'd swim the sea, still lapsing in its sodded frame, the sea that again and again calls out my name. Thank you. You know, whenever I think of joy and I think of the ecstatic, home is what I think of most, home and family. And I'm blessed tonight that my mother and sister are here in the audience with me. This is Mermaid. Caribbean time is 10 times stronger than the English variety. Just ask Miss Queenie and her Royal Navy, who couldn't yank a Jamaican weed from her rose garden that didn't grow back thick, tenfold, and blackened with the furor of a violated man. The tepid American I sank with my old shoes over the jaws of the Atlantic could never understand the hard clamor of my laugh, why I furrowed rough at the brow, why I knew the hollow points of every bone. But dig where the soil is wet and plant the proud seed of your shame tree. Don't let them say it never grew. Roll that saltfish barrel down the hill, sending that battered thunder clanging at the seaside moon, jangled by her long earrings at our sea, 10 times bluer than any blue eye. That mint tea whistling in the Dutch pot is stronger than liquor, and take 6 spoons of sugar, please. What can I say? My great-grandfather's blood was clotted thick with sugar cane and overproof rum. And when he bled, it trickled heavy, like molasses, clotted black, like phlegm in the throat. Every red ant from the grill to Frenchman's Cove came to burrow and suckle at his vein, where his leg was honeyed with a diabetic rot. And when he caught my grandmother in his wide fishing net, he served her up cold to his wild-eyed son, mermaid on the deck. This poem is called Hands, and it's actually a poem I wrote in tribute to my mother and Jamaican women like her whose labor so often goes unseen and unsung. And that's all I say. Hands. Out here, the surf rewrites our silences. This smell of ocean may never leave me. Our humble life or the sea, a dark page I am trying to turn. Today, my mother's words sound final, and perhaps this is her first true thing. Her hands have not been her hands since she was 12, motherless and shucking whatever the sea could offer, each day orphaned in the tide of her own necessity, where the men of war ballooned, wearing her face, her anchor of a heart reaching, mooring for any blasted thing. Sea roach and black-haired kelp, jeweled perch or a drop of pearl made with her smallest self, her night prayers a hushed word of thanks. But out here, the salt depths refuse tragedy. This hand-me-down life burns sufficiently tragic. Here, what was cannibal, masters the colonial curse, carved our own language of the macabre, sucking on the thumb of our own disparity. Holding her spliff in the wind, she probes and squalls, trying to remember the face of her own mother, our island, or some strange word she once found amongst the filth of sailors whose beds she made, whose shoes she shined, whose guns she cleaned, while the white bullet of America ricocheted. Mom, is that your phone? All right, let's back it up. Holding her spliff in the wind, she probes and squalls, trying to remember the face of her own mother, our island, or some strange word she once found amongst the filth of sailors whose beds she made, whose shoes she shined, whose guns she cleaned, while the white bullet of America ricocheted in her brain. Still, that face she can't recall made her chew her fingernails, scratch the day down to its blood, the rusty sunset of this wonder, this smashed archipelago, our wild sea grape kingdom overrun, gold and belonging in all its glory to no one. How being 12-fingered, she took her father's fishing line to the deviation and starved of blood what grew savage and unwanted, pulled until they shriveled away, two hungry mouths askance and blooming, reminding her that she was still woman, always multiplying as life's little nubs and dreams came bucking up in her disjointed. How on the god teeth she cut this life, offered her hands and vessel to be made wide, made purposeful, her body opalescent with all our clamoring, our bloodline of what once lived and will live and live again. In the sea's one voice she hears her answer. Beneath her gravid belly, my gliding hull, a conger eel. Mom likes that one. She was born with 6 fingers on each hand. You know, I'm sure she'll always turn it up and say, these hands, these are the hands. See? This next poem. So for the last 4 years, I've been doing my PhD at USC in California. I'm almost finished. In May, I'll be done, done. Which is a happy occasion for many reasons. But while I was there, it was a very interesting experience, particularly in the classes that I had to take, because I was shocked when I got there to find that we were still reading the same old white dead men. The syllabus was static. It would be like, you know, all white men, and then, oh, here's like Du Bois. Here's a black, like just throw in like a black. And so I decided while I was there that I was gonna make sure that the PhD worked for me, that whatever class I was taking, that I could distill something useful from the class by writing a poem. And so this poem was written when I was taking a class on Victorian literature, and I came across the fact that Victorian women were forbidden from practicing botany because the men thought the cross-section of flowers and plants too closely resembled female genitalia. And so I was like, okay, this can definitely work for me. And so I wrote this poem, which to me, celebrating the body is the deepest form of joy, the black body, the black woman's body. So this is Portrait of Eve as the Anaconda. I too am gathering the vulgarity of botany, the eye and its nuclei for mischief. Of man redacted I came, am coming, fasting, starving, carved myself a selfish idol, its shell unsuitable. I, twice discarded, arrived thorn-side, and soon outgrew his reptilian sheen. A fine specimen, let me have it. Something in violet, splayed in birdlime, legs an exposed anemone against jailbait August, its X-ray sky. This light, a Gorgon's slick, polygamous doom. And God again calling, much too late, who aches to stick an ache in my unmentionable. His primal plant remains elusive, wildfire and pathogen, blood not of human flesh there in his beard. How I am hot for it. Call me murderous, a glowing engine time to blow. Watch it go with unjealousy shadow, let me have it. This maidenhead primeval schemes what ovule of cruel invention, the Venus trap, the menses. And how many ways to announce this guilt? Whore's nest of ague, supernova, wild stigmata, womb. I boast of vogue sacrosanctum. engorging short pornographies, the cell's unruly strain, rogue empire multiplying for 1,000 virile 1,000 years, my wings pinned wide in parthenogenesis, such miraculous display. Thank you. And then I'll just do my last poem. You know, I mentioned I was getting my PhD at USC, and about 2 or 3 years ago, a white male professor at USC, whose name is Mark Irwin, called me. We know last night we were talking about shame. I feel like shame is such an important tool, naming and shaming. So this old white man named Mark Irwin called me into his office to tell me with grave concern that he thought my poems had too much of a female conceit and that I would alienate male readers and editors. And I told him that was not an accident and that I didn't care, you know? Yes. Somehow I managed to go on writing my little poems of female conceit. And whenever I read this poem, or often when I read this poem, I like to dedicate this poem to him and all the men like him. Mark Irwin from USC. This is center of the world. The meek inherit nothing. God, in his tattered coat, this morning, a quiet tongue in my ear, begging for alms. Cold hands reaching up my skirt. Little lamb, paupered flock, bless my black tea with tears. I have shorn your golden fleece, worn vast spools of white lace, glittering jacquard, gilded fig leaves, jeweled dust on my skin, corn silk hair in my hems. I have milked the stout beast of what you call America and wear your men across my chest like furs. Stick-pin fox and snow blue chinchilla, they too came to nibble at my door. The soft, pink tangles I trapped them in. Dear watchers in the shadows, dear thick-thighed fiends, at ease, please. Tell the hounds who undress me with their eyes, I have nothing to hide. I will spread myself wide. Here, a flash of muscle. Here, some blood in the hunt. Now, the center of the world, my incandescent cunt. All hail the dark blooms of amaryllis and the wild pink Damascus, my sweet Aphrodite unfolding in the kink. All hail hot jasmine in the night, thick syrup in your mouth, forked dagger on my tongue, legions at my heel. Here at the world's red Mecca, kneel. Here Eden, here Bethlehem, here in the cradle of Thebes, a towering sphinx roams the garden, her wet dawn devouring.
Children, listen. It turns out, however, that I was deeply mistaken about the end of the world. The body in flames will not be the body in flames, but just a house fire ignored. The black sails of that solitary burning boat rubbing along the legs of lovers flung into a Roman sky by a carousel. The lovers, too sick in their love to notice a man drenched in fire on a porch or a child aflame, mistaken for a dog, mistaken for a child, running to tell of a bomb that did not knock before it entered in Gaza with its glad tidings of abundant joy. In Kazmira's, a god is weeping in a window, one golden hand raised above his head as if he slipped on the slick rag of the future. Our human kindnesses, unremarkable as the flies rubbing their legs together while standing on a slice of cantaloupe. Children, you were never meant to be human. You must be the grass. You must grow wildly over the graves. I want to thank Rickey Laurentiis for inviting me for reading with these folks, reading Fatima. This has been like true joy. Like this is just, I was telling people I never could have imagined when I started writing poems in undergrad many, many years ago, to me, 18 years ago, and that there would be a moment where there would be something called CAP, right? That Center for African, like there would be, and that like this many black writers would be together, reading together, talking about our bodies, being in love, being in lust, being in tears, being like, this is just amazing. Like, I just feel like this is heaven. Like, this would just be heaven, just to hear black folks making art, making good poems, so. This next poem is called Best Barbarian. When our consent was against our will, as in it is said during slavery, Negro children were encumbrances, often given away. Scipio, baptized 1760, likely Negro boy, about a month old to be given away. Into the sea, as in below the harbor near Edisto Island, Ebo swung low in the chariot of their calling to be carried home. As in the way we lay, we mimed a body of water, so died for walking on the want of water. A forest of spooked, hoofless horses bearing this plow and flower, this bit, this bridle scold, this muling leather, this blood loss, this goodbye gone. But one gone ain't always equivalent to another, as in all silences are not the same, as in all money ain't good money. What silences are you responsible for? What gems have you jiggered into crows cajoled to sing in the pines and pages of poetry magazines for a prize? As in there is no succinct definition of exile, as in black is the black ain't, as in everywhere the bucks went clattering, the police bristled in the way, as in form forgets fugitivity is the original human form, as in best put on your best barbarian, as in this gospel is large enough that anything can be said about me and you, your mama and your cousin too, riding down the strip on Vogues, waking up slamming Cadillac doors, outcast and out of gas, the empire smiles in its guillotine and Gucci loafers, as if to say, I practice the abundance of zero, as in the world is always ending while someone is and ain't being born, as in motherfuck the weather, come and join the band of wild Negroes dancing the antelope and Holy Ghost in Gadsden and Gethsemane, as in leave the angel to his centuries of death. Leave the police dog of our future in his heavy paws, below the whites' only signs and water fountains, dreaming of bucks between his teeth, a healthy 401k or Roth IRA to ease into old age, and the arthritis of chasing everywhere the bucks go clattering, as in the black and blur, or the bright blur of black, as in the Negro must be still, must still be moving, which is the original cinema and cinematic motion of Ghost in Gardens, as in address yourself only to freedom, to the seed, the forest, the swamp, the night, the rain, the river, the rat, the snake, the panther, the tree leaping in and out of its green breath. So ecstasy. And after love had wept and eaten the burning heart, my burning heart, and love our Lord, 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 so awakened but not in horror, but yes, berserk, so human, so wanted beyond, so ecstasy, so not human, but all, as in without order, so wept, made into the vessel that which must be made, confronted, so less life and more, so ecstasy, finally legible without the formal drag of the body, leaf upon leaf in the morning street, so past desire as a tree just beyond a wooden fence, invisible in its possession and slow convulsions, hemorrhaging between night and the memory of waking as the wind, the night, the bleeding stars, which is how I awaken in you, as you, inside, out, begun. Which has no memory, ecstasy, beginning in the middle, always light, late, but slightly on time, the way I enter you, which is an asking, berserk as any nag beauty, so love without the chase harnesses of redemption, us somewhere after, tossed like money fleeced of its money, grip, so wild and without use, so useful because without expectation, so without error, so desire moving backwards, beyond opinion or the pinions of the body, so ecstasy, my mouth staggering to close upon your nipple, tree dwindling down to its birdseed, progress, finally a music made without progress, or the hint of ascension, which is how ascension is reached. Rain banally falling in a field, unaware a whole forest of elms rising from it in 3 days. So this next poem, I'm really interested in like hip hop's referentiality, like the way hip hop will allude to stuff like 5411s. I'll never forget that. Like this is in a rap song. 5411s is what Reeboks what Reeboks would call post-tax, right? And you had to know what the Reeboks were. So I just love that type of referentiality. There's a lot of references in this poem, and I'll just go over the ones that I feel like I need to attribute. So Jack Johnson, the boxer, famously known for being arrested for quote unquote trafficking white women across state lines. It was his wife, but it was illegal to be, married to a white woman in the 1920s. And so one time a reporter asked him, why do white women love black men so much? And he had the best answer. I think he had the best non-answer answer, which is because we eat cold eels and think distant thoughts. And I just think like, anytime someone asks you something you want to answer, just be like, because we eat cold eels and think distant thoughts. So that's Jack Johnson, that's not me. Susie Asada is from a poem, Gertrude Stein poem. Gertrude Stein is mentioned. Also there is a famous poem called like Decorations in the Nigger Cemetery that sort of show up in this. Are there any other? We do know that Steph Curry's real name or birth name, his first name is Wardell. We know, okay, good, okay. And we probably heard of William Blake. I just want, cause y'all see, it gets real, we about to go in. So this is Future from, this is a section called Future, and it's from Beyond the Voice of God. What shall be done with the demand for more selfies? Selfies of the crow in the wheat knocking against the window. Selfies of my daughter hooting like an owl and beating the back of her cage, the back of her bones. Selfies of Wittgenstein's eyes settling on the back of a crow, which is the shadow of a boy delivering milk to the door of his mother, where language begins. Gertrude Stein over the Stambergassi eating salt fish and conch fritters with Aimé Césaire. More selfies of Negroes from Niger and New Orleans, blue-black in the blue-black buck and canter of summer, and Yves Saint Laurent glasses and pinafores of light pinned to the eyes. No church in the wild, but more selfies of Susie Asada buck dancing on balustrades near the nigger cemeteries, where the chariot swung so low, we just called them commas. We about to fuck up some commas, yeah. Gerrymander and Jack Johnson the shit out of shit. Why do white women love black men? Because we eat cold eels and think distant thoughts. Jack Johnson, we need more selfies. Selfies of Frederick Douglass's pen removed from the gashes in his feet and writing hot checks for Rolexes and rivers our bodies just can't cash. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. We about to fuck up some trauma, yeah. Selfie and holler, yeah. Instagram at the ashram with Lil Weezy and Wardell Curry Jr., not senior, bussing three-pointers, yeah. On behalf of a local charity that sends mosquito nets to children in Africa. The Sudan, Niger, I don't know. Tiger, tiger, burning bright. Tiger, tiger hanging from the street light. Distant thought. I'm so in time, I'm out of time. So selfie, I'm healthy. I mean, I'm saying though, you know what I'm saying? And this last poem I'll read is called Sovereign Silence, or The City, and it's kind of an ekphrasis piece. There is a painting up at the Blanton Museum in Austin, Texas right now, at the University of Texas, and I think it's 90 by 74. It's a really huge painting of a Klan rally above a city. And it's beautiful, it's brilliant. I think it's an amazing piece by an artist named Vincent Valdez. And so this sort of poems in conversation, also in conversation with all these discussions we have about empathy. Sovereign Silence, or The City. Empathy will not end genocide. It won't even delay it. There, the children running from napalm into the palm of our vision. Above the city, a Klan rally wounding all the light and what you cannot see. Here you expect another disaster, quartered and cracked, yoked and yellowed, flogged and rabid, translated into a gash or coffin, a prison notebook neutered of its nude rage, dick in its hand, uncensored memoir of the beaver pursued by trappers for the tincture in its testicles, and in order to keep whole, he tears off his own testicles and runs. Even a rose needs an exit strategy without the paparazzi of having to explain, I woke up like this, I woke up like this, or worse, I was bought like this, I was bought and sold like this. Flawless, the dogs and daughters of disaster refuse to crinkle paper into tinkling roses, or revise fire and the bodies that lay beneath to escape a fire into anything else other than suffering. Not a badiyah nor an inshallah, not a mama say nor a makusa, not a shinshallah damyata nor a Holy Ghost gospel stomp. The nightingale above the dead beaver in the bushes sings not of the hurricane beating the bamboo into noise, but of the death trapped inside its body, which is louder than any beauty, which is all the beauty ever known, before and after genocide. Go out now and retrieve your dying from this field you've not come to until now. Thank you.
I am so damn happy to be here tonight. You know, it's something about listening to other people read their poems that actually gets me reinvigorated to want to write poems. And you know you've been somewhere that's worth being when you go to a poetry reading and then you come home and you say, I really want to write. It's that kind of motivation that you want to get from the words, right? So I was thinking about what I was going to read today, and I thought that I might give you a mix of new work and older work. Work from my first book, Simulacra, which is based roughly on Baudrillard's concept of trans aesthetics, which is, it posits this idea that one must destabilize evaluative systems and hierarchies in order to understand art in a new way. It means that we have to open up the way that we see art. It means that we have to open up the way that we see ourselves in order to understand a new type of paradigm for art. And so when I was thinking about that as it relates to the work that I was writing inside Simulacra, it occurred to me that being a Black woman, right, in America joy is a political act. It really is. It's like what Albert Camus said in The Myth of Sisyphus, the last line, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. And it's just in that imagination, in knowing that he's taking that boulder up the hill and gonna watch it roll down for all of eternity, but when he gets to the top and watches it, he's smiling. That's his way of sticking it to the man. It's his way of saying, I know I have to do this for the rest of all eternity, but I'm gonna do it with a smile, just so you'll be uncomfortable in my joy. So that said, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my life through the book, and then I'm gonna move into some newer work. Rebel Prelude. In the garden or our bedroom, we'd made love or forgot or were arguing about the bushes, hydrangea or rhododendron. Purple ivies climbing our back fence, opal basil wilting. One of us had forgotten to water her, or was it autumn and she was dying on her own? Either way, the infested pepper dangling by frayed browning stem threads caught both of our attention. How did that parasite get inside? You mumbled something about larvae, but I knew it was a winged thing, a puncture, a black and wicked door. Confessions from here. I left our window open most nights. A man with winged ankles would visit while you slept. He'd ask about my doings, how the Syra finished. Notice the dimple on my chin when I smiled, touch the thick swell of my waist lightly. When the wind whistled like the northeast corridor, he tongued the small of my back before leaving. After 2 most mornings, I wailed a tempest that last time. Flooded our basement. Asked him to stay or carry me over. He tucked me in the crook of his elbow and flew here, where I am now. When you woke the next morning, I imagine you thought it rained the night before. You called the plumber, didn't you? To fix the basement swollen from squalls. Did you dig your finger into the blistering cinder, check for mold? Did the walls crumble? When you asked the children where their mother was, did they shrug, bounce my name between rooms, weep into their porridge? If they beat their bare feet against the cracked tiles in the hallway, did you notice those tiny feathers sprouting from their Achilles? Did you wrinkle your brow, grab your shears? Letters to my would-be lover on dolls and repeating. Dear, Girl Scout for 2 years, then I quit. I can tie 37 types of knots. I can untie none of them. Dear, I don't understand when you wrote, I am full of shit, imbalanced, and you can't stand me. I don't want to be presumptuous, so I'll just wait to hear back. I have a tendency to read into things. Dear, things are a language. I once read that in a horribly written book. When mother neglected me, she'd buy me a doll. I hated dolls, yet there was something oddly comforting in getting the thing I didn't want. I'd opt for a Barbie, of course. I'd get home and pile her into her pink Barbie dream house with the others. I didn't even bother prying the box tethers off her neck. I rather liked them. They reminded me of a noose. Dear, a faith healer, psychic, medium, pagan evangelist told me that I could raise dead things. I don't actually know what that means. Seems selfish to rouse someone in eternal slumber because I'm sleepwalking. Dear, I never asked your name. May I call you Lazarus? Dear, 11, lost it to a Ken doll, don't tell anyone. It's one of those secrets between childhood friends. Whenever she slept over, we would take our hard Kens and rub their smooth plastic heads against our pussies. I could hear her moan, I feigned sighing, my fingers knew me better. I needed something more from Ken. I took him into me, up to the shoulders. When I pulled him out, blood from his head dripped down his torso. Ken had that same picket tooth smile, pinkish though, none the worse for wear. And I swear, I felt him breathing. Dear. Not much to tell. I stockpiled that one with all the Barbies. Once I'd had him, he was of no use to me anymore. Dear. Same as yours. Father was a moody bastard genius, and I don't know if I blame drugs or schizophrenia. I do know I worry. Lunacy is genetic, I'm told. Anyway, I'm off. To pick up my prescriptions and some Shiraz, nothing to worry about. One to stay awake, one to fall asleep, one to feel normal, one to feel. I'm gonna be in conversation with Roger's piece, which he mentioned, Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein is one of my favorite philosophers. Brilliant dude, humble dude, never let anybody know. In World War II, he worked in a hospital as what was equivalent to a candy striper. He was one of the preeminent philosophy professors of his time in England during the war, and he never let anybody know that when he was working in the hospital. Not that that has anything to do with this poem, just background. Can, from Wittgenstein's Lost Black Book. Explain the word can. Can a machine be lonely? Man as cog lightning widget, vast industrial tiny, glossed conveyor belt enabler. Day laborers may argue machines can't be other than machines. But what are the hours of day laborers? What if lonely happens at night? Keen blooms. We only ever know what we've seen. I'll say no more of this now. Can you run your nimble finger down a myth's spine thread at 3 a.m.? How would you know? The answer is you wouldn't unless you did. Or whatever answer you want to provide. When I was in grad school, I was thinking quite heavily about Gertrude Stein. I hated her very much. Hated all of her work, couldn't stand it. Was introduced to Tender Buttons. I'd read Tender Buttons many years before that, but was reintroduced to it in graduate school. And it occurred to me that my grandmother spoke in the same way that Gertrude Stein spoke. Gertrude Stein was a millionaire. She inherited a bunch of money, railroad money, from her family. And she could, in fact, make a living off of kind of bastardizing English in some way, or what she would consider a bastardization of English. She didn't say it was that, but that's exactly what she was doing. She was appropriating Black English. I thought about that, and I was like, wow, if my grandmother had to come up with a book during the period of the modernists, she might have been a millionaire by now, or at least I would be, because she's long dead. I would have appreciated that. If my late grandmother were Gertrude Stein, 1, Southern migration. Leech, broke speech, leaf ain't pruning pot, lay, lie, hair straight off, arrowed branch and horse joint, elbow ash, roe fish, roe dog, slow milk pig, blue water sister, hogs like willow. Weep crow, weep cow, soul bug, soul narrow, inch way, inches away, over the bridge, back that way, fur needles in coal, black hole, black out, black feet, blame, long way still, not there, here, same. 2, feed the soul. Old crow, liquor, drink, drunk, girdle, grits, grit, tea, get shaved, shooked, shucked, shit, flour, lard, and swallow, hard edge chew, chipped tooth bite, tool chip bite, bloat, 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 blight, seat, blight, sit, T, be light, city, downtown, dim, slight, dark, old ark, new ark, new ark, new ark, new work, Nork. Lark fed, cornbread, bed feather back, Sunday shack, church fat, grease gloved, dust rubbed, cheap heeled shoe, window seat, mirror eye, window, 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 when though, wind blow? November, December, no cinder, no summer, no slumber. Branch, branched, blanched, fried, freed, fly, want what, graves want. 3, miscegenation. Good, smooth, curly-haired baby, baby rockabye, mama rockabye her baby. Wrestle the earth, baby, no dirt, shine, 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 neck, porcelain, tin, tarnish, milk, powder, milk, pout her, silk, inheritance. Front the wash tub, top the bed, bin, leaky numbers, run in, run on. Red fever holds your palm, sweat it out. Hot, hot, heat the rest. Pretty melt that wax wide flower. Ellis Island daddy, oh, daddy's bar, band. Mongrel hum, come now. Little bones bend, old crack, creak, crank, crick, curly Q. Fuck them, then fuck them. You hear me, good-haired baby? Walk through. Half of you belong. 4, on Gertrude Stein. Who? Bill's Mount. Picasso, who? Matisse, who? Mortgage. No currency, canvas, pay brushes, stroke, bridge, brittle, blend, 10 miles, daybreak, 10 miles, daybreak, we broke. No brick, widgets in the envelope, no railroad, green agriculture, pea snap, earth under nail, spine and stilt woman, roach kill, heel woman, roaches in the crawl woman, creep, keep, 5th grade, everywhere, we're everywhere, anyhow. We sacrifice and hammer, they sacrifice the hammer, never. Axe and hatchet make callous, hard hand, prison pen, privilege, pinned, bar, thorn, pinned, pine, cross, crown, wait. Iron is harder. Chicken fat can full of spark kill or spark cull or spark cull, ho. Heave, ho, heave, holy, heavy, light's genius. That is that, Gertrude. Who? I never recommend doing this. I'm going to do this. It's a poem I wrote for this event, actually, and finished it today. Don't do that. I do it because it's kind of a distillation of everything that I felt like I learned this week. I learned quite a bit. Viewing Devin's work, walking through the Warhol, being with my friends. There was something joyous in that. Something worth celebrating, something worth praise. A year ago, I went to Margaret Walker's Historical Center at Jackson State University in Mississippi. Margaret Walker is the first woman who won the Yale Younger Award in the 40s. I was the second in 2016. There was 70 years plus years between us. When I was there, I felt like I heard very clearly. I was walking the grounds. I took a drive to where her house was, and I just stood outside. Her family still owns the house. And I just stood outside and I looked, and I heard very clearly, experience joy. And I didn't know what that meant. Everything I'd written to that point had been, to me, sad, to me, a testimony, a witness of my life. But it doesn't have to stay there. Black Ecstatic panegyric. Praise to the father holding his sleeping daughter on the 52nd Street trolley, to the daughter sleeping through the pothole thrum. Praise to the diabetic with shorn feet and sugarcane blood, to the shooting nerve through the left hip and lower spine, to those flying gods on their roots. Praise to the red-haired Rasta in his ganja lace t-shirt, to the Vietnam vet at Cass Corridor holding his sign, to the sign which reads, "I'm not homeless, I'm just black." Praise to the barbers trying to calm the fatherless children in their chairs, to the mothers trying not to overhear this soothing. Praise to raised skylines and ruins, to whatever replaces the horizon, to the lost toddler who refuses to speak to strangers, to the strangers who would not let him be lost, to the police who've never discharged their firearms, to the neighbors who do not presume to be police, to sustenance delivered or grown or given. Praise to EBT undoing paper shame, to the hustlers selling EBT at Walmart, to the single dads working night shifts, to the work. Praise to sisters in love with who won't love them, to others in love with who won't bother. Praise to the lovers who left lessons, to the lovers who left scars, to the memory of topography, raised surface, smooth to touch. To egos, porcelain shards, and leathery ids, fringed edges, and the unrecalled to remembering. Praise to boys who make beeswax fingernails, to little girls who wear fatigues and eye black. Praise to Miss Toto, Bambi Banks, Pearl Harbor, to bombs that never landed, to satellites that couldn't be coaxed to Earth. To the dreams and bodies that won't hold a lie. Praise to beauty that doesn't suffer rules, to dollar store chic and sleek vintage tins, to Rouge olive oil spray and NYX, to type 2 wave and type 4 curl, to wanting to be, to being. Praise to lust's resurrection, to shame's death. Praise to 7 ways, pussy hallelujahs. Praise to the fingertips, 5 of the 7. Praise to every nipple, manic and downtrodden, to the cock eschewed, to the cock swallowed, to le petit mort, to box spring bang, to the frictive giving way to sublime, to the littered freeway and ordered garden, perfect parts and locks and press and knots, the impermanent and dead end, to Mickey Moto and Medusa's rocks, to motherfucking slingshots. Praise to the hard-won win against Kronos, to the stone wrapped in swaddling, the eaglet safe in hiding, the sea fostering families, the eye uncrossed, uncrowed. Praise to the overlooking, to the overlooked. Praise to boot houses, to children running over frayed laces. Praise to that old kitchen half-gutted, its gnats and winter flies. Praise to mice-hugging corners, sweet scraps splayed on granite. Praise to that which lasts. Old doors, layers of paint, to years of storm beating solid oak. Praise to the gable roof that is a ceiling, the coffered ceiling that is also a floor. Praise to open wombs and caskets, to any mother who must decide either. Praise to what shoulders wait, to brackets and load-bearing walls, beams and spindly skeletons, sacred geometry and tangents, to levees and pregnant winters, the bullet-ridden body, to coil sprung and wheel. Praise soon to the crown and seed lowering, to both the thorny and fertile soil. Praise to the ground unfastening, to every earthworm's bristle and every seraph's 6 wings, interlocked in a song dance of welcome, to the body relenting only to dust, the spirit ascending straightway to stars. Praise to all who rejoice in becoming, to all who rejoice in return. Thank you.
So what you witness is a part of a larger work that I don't know when it will ever be finished. I'm not concerned with it being finished as much as I am concerned with living. In the beginning, one of my interlocutors, Sumo, begins with the narrative speaking about his relationship with his father. And I wished I would have spent more time in Richmond, Virginia with him, but I plan to go back because I'm very fascinated by this relationship that he and his father has, and how it particularly influences his sexuality. His father told him that you can be gay, but you can't be one of those fat gay people. Inserts me. I want to explore this idea of no fats, no femmes, and the psyche of a Black gay man through Sumo's eyes, because I do think that that will be the work that I think will really seal this in a way that Seeing Me won't. This work moves through themes of identity, sexuality, religion, gender, and what I am really exploring as self-creation and world-making. On one hand, my work has been about a cultural critique and the other world-making. That has been moving from the runways of the ballroom scene to the runways of New York Fashion Week. That has been training my inner eyes to see differently, right? So that my eyes can see differently, which is to say that there must be a revolution in the way that we see. Thank you, Bell Hooks. Yeah, that's all I have to say, honestly. I really wish, I could say more and that we could be in conversation, but thank you. Thank you.
Wow, okay, well, let's just give everyone a round of applause. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Safiya. Thank you, Dee. Like Ecstasy itself, we have exceeded our time, so therefore we can't actually do the discussion, but this gives you more encouragement to come tomorrow, because we'll all be there, and you can talk to us. It's Pittsburgh, so we have to get to dinner really quickly before 9 o'clock comes, so blame Pittsburgh. But instead of that, I want to leave you with a question that maybe you can think about. And it's a simple question, really, how are you bringing the ecstasy and joy into your lives? I mean, we're living in times that are dark, to say the least, probably white, to say it better. But how will you maintain and practice joy in your life and in the days to come? Maybe that's something for us all to think about and to bring us into tomorrow. So thank you all. Thank you. This has been great. And thank you, Warhol. Thank you, Cap. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow. And thank you, Devin. It was all for Devin.